Go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to today's session. And we did know in advance that Lucy and Dale and Helen were not going to be able to join us today. We've not had Carmen join us online yet. And so if she doesn't join prior to starting the paired discussion, we'll need to think creatively about how we do that. But I think that we'll be okay. So again, welcome to all of you who are here today. As a quick reminder, housekeeping reminder, you're going to keep your microphones and webcams turned off until you raise your hand to speak or until we call on you to speak, and that way we will kind of preserve the bandwidth for being able to see and hear one another clearly. If you need to contact us at any time during today's session, just type an asterisk into the chat box. And again, the session today will be recorded so that you can view it afterward. Tomorrow you will get an email with a link to the recording from today's session. Again, today we are going to be, we're meeting now using GoToMeeting, and we are going to be working offline, either using Skype or our telephones, whichever will work best this afternoon, and we can think about that a little bit more in a moment when we think about how the pairings are going to work. If we look at today's pairings, what we had planned is for Wendy and Sue to pair, to talk together, and for Carmen and Mary to talk together. If Carmen doesn't join, I think that what I'm going to suggest, I'm hoping that Mary and Sue are both on the Hillingdon campus today. And if Carmen does not join us, what I'm going to ask you to do is when we begin the paired discussion to kind of physically meet up in either Mary's room or Sue's room and either call or Skype to Wendy and do a trio discussion rather than a pair discussion. I think that will work best, again, if Carmen hasn't joined us by the time we start that group discussion. Before we get started today, I wanted to just have any questions about anything we've done so far, or anything you've been working on your own. If you just type an asterisk into the box, and then we'll unmute your microphone. Do you have any questions before we start today? All right, and do keep in mind that you can type an asterisk into that box anytime to ask a question or to make a comment. Session 3 is devoted to this question: how do I write an annotated bibliography? I think that one of the things that we've touched on briefly is that in formal action research, if you were doing this as part of a master's project or as a formal piece, you would actually do a literature review, which is a much more comprehensive look at the existing academic literature about the topic that you are researching, as well as the interventions that you're proposing to use. And in a literature review, you'd be not only looking for peer-reviewed literature that supports the thing that you are trying to do, but you'd also want to look for literature that challenges or maybe even gives you contradictory results, because oftentimes you can learn from what other researchers have done that has not worked as a way to figure out what might work best for you. In this short course, we're not going to write a literature review, but we are going to. We were hoping that you were going to practice a little bit of writing annotated bibliographies. And I do know that the 3 people who are not here today, that 2 of them had indicated that they had done the annotated bibliographies and had kind of worked their way through and figured out how to do this and felt confident in doing it. Today we are going to be looking at the work that you did in preparation for the session. But before we do that, if we could just take a look at this short video, which reviews a lot of the content that you saw in the reading and that you came across in the learning blogs. And Carmen has joined us, so that when we do get to that time when we're doing the pair discussions, we do have everyone with us today.
Hello, and welcome to Session 4 of Getting Started with Action Research. As we discussed in earlier sessions, reviewing the published academic literature is fundamental to the action research process. This short video will introduce you to annotated bibliographies. The process of reviewing literature begins with choosing relevant literature, then evaluating the literature in terms of what it means and how the information can be used, and finally synthesizing the information so that major points or themes from the literature can be used to guide your research questions and methods. Writing an annotated bibliography is one way you can analyze and summarize the published academic literature you've read in preparation for planning your action research project. Let's look more closely at how to develop an annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography combines two elements that you are probably quite familiar with: a citation and an annotation. A citation is the information a person would need to find the article or publication you have read. There are several ways you can write a citation, depending on the writing style guidelines you are using. But all citations include the same four basic pieces of information, regardless of the punctuation or formatting you use. The first piece of information in a citation is the name or names of the author or authors of the work. The names are usually written last name first, followed by the first initial. If there's more than one author, they may be listed in order of their contributions to the research. The second piece of information is the year of the publication. The year is typically in parentheses. The third piece of information is the title of the book or article. If it's a book title, capital letters are used the same way they are in the published work. If it's an article, only the first word may be capitalized. If it's a book title, the title may also be italicized. The fourth piece of information is the publisher or source. If it's a book, the publisher and the publisher's home city are listed. If it's an article, the name of the magazine or journal, the volume or issue, and the pages on which the article are printed are all included. If you were able to read the article for free online, you should also provide information about where it can be found. Simply write source, followed by the URL. Be sure to test the URL to be sure you've written it correctly. Your citations should all be included in the bibliography or reference list of any reports arising from your action research project. They reveal the sources of the concepts or methods you used or adapted and avoid any perceptions of plagiarism. Now let's look at how to write an annotation. Most annotations also include four elements. The first element is information about the author. The researcher may be a graduate student or an educational practitioner. They may be a university staff member or a recognized expert in the field. Because researchers may have a wide range of experience, it's important that their works have been peer-reviewed. The second element is a description of the work, summarizing the research method and results. The third element is an evaluative description of the work, explaining your perceived strengths and/or weaknesses of the research methods or interpretations of the results. The fourth element is a brief interpretive statement, explaining how you think the research is relevant to your research question and how it may inform your methods, data collection, or approaches to data analysis. These four elements are typically combined in a single paragraph, and although typically succinct, there are no word count limits. 3 things to look for as you read each of the works you will include in your annotated bibliography are relevance, credibility, and similarity. In choosing the work to read, you've already made some judgments about its relevance to your research question. After reading the work, you should carefully consider whether the information can help inform your action research study. For example, does it provide conclusions about the intervention you are planning to use? You should also consider whether the author seems credible. If the work is not a research report, are the claims or suggestions made by the author based on experience or opinion alone? If the work is research-based, do the methods seem sound? And do you think the conclusions are supported by the data? And has the work been peer-reviewed? Although peer review is no guarantee, it tells you that an expert or experts in the field consider the work to be credible. Finally, you should consider how similar the context of the study is to your own planned research. Who were the participants, and where did the research take place? Are these similar to your own participants and setting? Whether you are working alone or with a team on your action research project, you will need to discuss what you have read and how you will use it to shape your action research. It's important to get feedback from peers or critical friends to ensure the rigor of your project. After you read, analyze, and summarize the literature you have selected and discuss your interpretations with others, you should revisit your research question and refine it if necessary. In the next session, we'll begin talking about qualitative and quantitative research methods and planning for data collection. Thank you for your interest in action research.
All right, if anyone has any questions about anything they heard in that quick content recap, or questions about what they may have read in the Action Research book or in the learning logs, we just go ahead and type an asterisk into the box, into the chat box. Mary, go ahead and open your microphone, please.
Hi, everyone. I just had a quick question about the difference between annotations and footnotes, and whether footnotes are used in an annotated bibliography or only through the body of text when the piece is written.
Hi, Mary. I'm not certain if there is a hard, fast rule, or if that, again, is something that would be prescribed or prescribed by style guidelines. In most of the pieces that I have read, footnotes tend to be used like in the body of the research report rather than in the annotations themselves. The annotated bibliography in some cases is, if you don't produce a literature review, oftentimes the annotated bibliography is an appendix or an attachment to a report or a paper. So again, annotated bibliographies are kind of a less approach to a literature review, and it really depends on how you'll write up the piece when you're done. The important thing about the annotated bibliography is that regardless of whether or not you're going to take your piece of work all the way through publication, doing this purposeful search for and reflection on the published literature around your topic is, I mean, it's fundamental to action research. If you skip that step, you really are not doing action research. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'd always got mixed up between the idea of using a footnote or annotations and had somehow assumed they were the same thing. But yeah, this has made things a bit clearer. Thank you very much.
And Mary, one other thing that I should have mentioned also that was in that short film is that oftentimes the citation part of the annotation, of course, is part of the bibliography. And you always want to make sure that the citation, if you're using footnotes, that it matches up with the footnotes. So anything that you footnoted, you'll also include in the bibliography in terms of showing what the complete work is and where it can be found.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Mary. All right, I'm going to ask everyone to do just a really quick task. In your chat box, if you could just really quickly tell us what experience you have had or not had with annotated bibliographies or literature reviews. So if you've ever written one of those before, could you put that in? If you've never done either, could you write that in as well? So we need to get a response from everyone. So either it's something you've done and this is what you've done, or this is something new. Again, if you'll type that into the chat box, please. Yeah. So Wendy says it's something new. Sue said that she's done a literature review at the undergraduate and graduate levels, but never done an annotated bibliography. Mary says she's more familiar with literature reviews. I'm not sure if Carmen is there. Carmen, if you are, oh, I'm sorry, there you go. Thanks, Carmen. Carmen said she did one a long time ago, about 23 years ago. Great. Well, with any luck, this has been just a bit of a refresher if it's something that people have done before. And if you haven't done it before, I'm hoping that we provided enough information for you to feel confident in creating an annotated bibliography. In the next part of today's session, we're going to ask you to take out Learning Log 4.1. So if you want to pull that out or get access to that, whatever works best for you. Our Skype pairings today, or our paired discussion pairings today, are Wendy and Sue, and Carmen and Mary. And again, you can decide what works best for you if you're going to use Skype, if you're going to use just a telephone to communicate back and forth. In just a moment, we're going to ask you to discuss these three questions. So again, these all refer to Learning Log 4.1. And what we'd like you to talk about is we'd like you to discuss the articles that you summarized in your bibliography. Who were the titles and who were the authors? What were some of the main points? But most importantly, what I would like you to focus on in your discussion is how reading those articles have shaped your thinking about your research question. How has it shaped the ideas you have about the method you might follow? How has it shaped the possible ways that you're going to manage your data collection? Has it shaped the ways you've thought about how you're going to analyze data? So how anything that you read in any of the articles you chose, how is that shaping your research question? We're going to give you 15 minutes, and we will change the screen when there's about 7 minutes left, so that if one person has been speaking in the front part, if you could just at that point flip and give the other person an opportunity to share. Again, if you have any questions as you go through, just type an asterisk into the box, and we will either communicate using the chat box or open your microphone. Have about 15 minutes, so as soon as you get connected, please go ahead and start.
Hi everyone, you've got 7 minutes left. Thank you.
All right, welcome back everyone. If you want to just kind of draw those discussions to a close, in just a moment, I am going to ask you to just kind of share out what you talked about. And I had been planning to call on one person from each of the pairs to kind of give us an idea of what you talked about. But today, because there are only 4 of us in the session, what I'd like to do is open each person's microphone individually. And if you'd like to share something with us, go ahead and share. And if not, please feel free to pass, especially if we've called on, the person who you chatted with before you and they've summarized everything that you talked about. So what we want to focus on again in this sharing session is how the articles you read shaped the way you're thinking about your research question. And we're going to begin with Wendy. So Wendy, if you'd like to open your microphone, and again, if you'd like to respond, that's fine. If you'd like to pass, just tell us that you'd like to pass. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Reading the articles and going through this process has actually been really beneficial, because when I've looked at the sources that they've cited, it's opened up a whole new range of articles to look at. So I actually spent a lot of time kind of exploring the resources that they had shared. So I found they'd opened up new terminology that I've used as search terms, as well as reinforcing the key sources. But what we did talk about was who the audience was for the annotated bibliography. And that was one thing that we weren't so clear about. Because the actual process of writing it, I personally found quite challenging.
Hi, Wendy, thanks for that. And just as a general note, typically the audience for the annotated bibliography is the action researcher or the collaborators on the action research. So it really is written to inform the next parts of the process. So it's designed to inform the research design process. And so it really is for you rather than for public sharing. Again, some people will take the annotated bibliography and transform those into a brief literature review or just more of a narrative about the pieces that you've looked at that have informed your research design. But the annotated bibliography is typically for the researcher.
Okay, yeah, because that's something we discussed, was this wouldn't necessarily be a format that, if it was just for us, that we would set it out in this way. But yeah.
Yeah. In some projects, like if you were working with collaborators, and let's just say, for example, that you were working on a topic that had loads of published information about it, one of the other uses for an annotated bibliography is you could actually divide up the task of reading those. And one of the reasons for annotating it would be just a summarized way to share what the different pieces said, so that your group would have access to all of the information in all the articles without every person having to read through every article. it could help people in the group decide that, that they pick additional articles they wanted to read based on your annotation of those pieces. So again, they tend to be mostly for use by the researchers, and it always depends on kind of the composition of the research team and the scope and the complexity of the question that you're looking at and how much literature there is around that piece. So Wendy, all great questions. Thank you very much for those. Carmen, if you'd like to go ahead and open your microphone, please. Hi, Carmen.
Hello. I'm sorry, my voice is going, so I might be coughing and it's not very good. I paired up with Mary today, and I'm sure she's going to talk about her what opinion she has about all this. But for me, it was the fact that I found some articles, but as said in the previous session, some of them, in order to read the entire article, I have to pay for. So what I found very useful was the fact that this article already had a summary. So I didn't really have to make any, I didn't read the whole article, but I didn't have to make any annotations. Also, I think for me it's very difficult. I looked at the things that the school subscribed to, and because my subject is PE, I haven't found anything PE related in the all the subscriptions that the school has. That was the only thing that I brought up with Mary, and
Carmen, you actually make a really good point that there are going to be times when people's research questions are more specialist than the resources that we have at our fingertips. And I mean, if you decided to actually carry out this piece of action research as part of your professional growth, one of the things that Latifa and I can do is to actually help you find collaborators at regional, national, international universities who may have access to that information. I know that you probably know that universities in the UK, like Loughborough, are specialist sports and PE universities. And again, one of the things that we do with SIM projects especially is help build those partnerships and relationships with other institutions that could give you access to the kind of information that you're looking for.
Yeah, I know that, and in the past we had, I think we had a subscription at Human Kinetics as well as the PE department, but I think that stopped years ago.
Yeah. All right, Carmen, thank you very much. We're going to go to Sue next. So Sue, if you'd like to unmute your microphone, please. Hi, Sue.
Hi, guys. I think Wendy summarized everything that we talked about very well. The other part of that what we talked about was how we can maybe start helping each other if we're working in similar areas. So that would be another interesting way to move forward. But everything else was exactly as she said. So thank you, Wendy, for summarizing so beautifully.
Great, Sue. Thank you very much. Just as a quick note before we go on to Mary, I noticed that I wrote down a note for myself when Carmen was speaking, and she said that when she had opened up one of her articles, she actually found a summary there, which looked very much like what an annotation would have looked like, and she was able to use that. One of the other really useful pieces of literature that you can look for in your topics are literature reviews that have already been done about your topics. And by simply including the word literature review in your search of string words, you should be able to find any published literature reviews on that topic. And literature reviews, it's interesting that most literature reviews I've come across have been available for free. They're very seldom fee-based publications because they tend to be produced by graduate students or university students rather than things that you find published in the academic literature. So literature reviews are another really good source of that already digested, already summarized information. Mary, go ahead, please, and open your microphone. Go ahead,
Hi,
Mary.
everyone. Thank you for the insights. I was commenting on how notoriously bad I tend to be at referencing papers and literature reviews. And I was sharing with Carmen how I found that when I do a process of reading for any task like this, I tend to retain a lot of the information and make the connections already in my head before I write the review. And therefore, when it comes to writing the review, I can put things together in a way that allows me to forget where each part came from. And so I think that having never tried this annotated bibliography idea before, it seems like a very nice way to focus a task and focus things based on the objective and the target without allowing me to divert too much in collecting the information. So I think in terms of looking at such a wide-scale research project that I'm considering in terms of STEM and integrating math into sciences, this will be a very useful method for bringing all my ideas together so that I don't lose track when it does come to writing the literature review.
Mary, thank you very much for that. Just another little technique that I know that people have used in the past, and as Mary said, once you kind of understand what the components are that you want to include either in an annotation or that you want to kind of be able to hold and remember in preparation for writing a literature review, when you kind of have these 4 prompts in mind, one of the very easy things to do is that if you whether you print paper copies or have electronic copies, if you use a highlighter, again, an electronic one or a pen one, to simply highlight those ideas as you go through, especially if you're going to produce a literature review and not an annotated bibliography as a step in the process. Again, as long as you're asking yourself those questions and you're actually highlighting those bits that help you answer those questions, it can really streamline the process of synthesizing the literature that you're looking at in preparation for designing your research project. So Mary, thank you very much for that. At this point, I'm just going to ask if anyone else has anything that they want to share to that conversation. You've heard everyone's responses. If anyone wants to add something, if you could just type an asterisk into the box and we'll open your microphone. And if there's anything else that you want to ask or comment on today, today has been a slightly shorter session because we had a much smaller group and consequently we had a much shorter time needed for our discussion. Again, if there's anything else you'd like to talk about right now, just type an asterisk into the box. All right, and please remember that you can contact us at any time between now and our next session. As in all the sessions, we have provided a learning log. I don't know if any of you are using these, but if you are using them, if you just quickly jot your learning summary points or your learning points onto those. Tomorrow, you're going to receive a link to the recording of this session and the materials for session 5. And as a reminder, session 5 will be held on the 28th of February following the UK break. So we do have a bit of a 2-week break right now in our schedule. The next 2 sessions are both about research design. And the next session is going to focus on kind of defining and refining your intervention, as well as identifying the participants who are going to be part of your study and beginning to think about the ethical considerations that you need to consider in involving them in your research. So specifically, the ethical considerations for involving students as co-researchers in your action research. You'll receive an invitation to join the session 5 on Monday the 27th, so you will get that little reminder that it will be happening that Tuesday. If you'd like to discuss anything, if you have any questions between now and then, please do contact us. If not, thank you again for joining us this afternoon and have a great break. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a good break.
Thanks, Sue. Bye.